Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Social Theory. My name is Thomas Hanna. I am your host today and the founder of BlogPhoto.tv, and I am super excited again about this show. I know every week I say I'm super excited, but I mean it. I really am. Today we have somebody on who has built an entire business around helping other businesses acquire the funds that they need to be able to allow their business to thrive. And we're going to dive into some of the ways that you can do that and pick her brain on an upcoming book that she has coming out. Before I turn you over to her, I want to remind you that this is an interactive show. And so in the second half of our show, we will be taking in your comments, your questions, and dealing with those directly. And so there's two ways you can get involved in the conversation. The first, if you're watching on Google+, you can simply leave a comment right here on the event page. You're tracking those, bringing those in through Comment Tracker. The second, if you're watching anywhere else, if you're watching on the website or on Facebook or Twitter or wherever else you may be, you can interact simply by tweeting your comments or questions to #STShow. We're bringing that hashtag in as well. And so now, without further ado, I want to introduce you to the financial genius of the hour here at Social Theory, Stephanie Sims. How are you doing, Stephanie?
Wow, I am great. And with an introduction like that, I don't know, I have a lot of work to do. How about that?
And now we're done. That was our show.
We're done. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm really glad that that you are able to be here. I know that it's been a long time coming. It was, what was it, was it 8 months ago that I actually met you when I was out there in Arizona, and the group of the hurlers.
Yes, exactly. We had that hurl. I don't remember. God, it's been a long time. Has it been that long? Maybe.
I don't remember. It seems like it's been a while. I know it hasn't been a year, but it has been certainly in the months. So I'm glad that I can finally be able to get you in here and have you on the show, and perfect timing as well, because I know you've got some exciting things coming up, and we're going to dive into that. But before we go in there, tell me a little bit about what you do and your journey into this business that you are now running.
Okay, well, you'll have to cut me off because I love to talk about finance, and I know it's a little geeky, but if it gets too much, you just let me know. I actually started out in investment banking. So I used to be what I call a suit. All those guys and gals who wear ties and have nice shoes and all of that stuff. I started out in investment banking, worked on a lot of high dollar transactions, flew all over the place, thought I was as cool as possible. And then I realized after I left banking and went to work for a tech company that all those people I was helping get money weren't quite as unintelligent as I had thought they were when I was on the other side. They just had a bunch of different issues. So I got exposed to all the issues that company encounters as they're trying to grow, as they're dealing with new employees, with new clients, new production processes. And that really got me thinking, okay, wait a minute, there's two different pieces here. Then kind of the clincher for me to kick me into what I'm doing now was that my mom and dad had actually owned their business, a local printing business, for more than 25 years. And they both worked in it. They had a small team, but a very loyal team, and they wanted to cut back, right? Like they didn't want to work as much anymore. And when they started looking at what they could do to sell their business, they ran into all kinds of trouble. And so thankfully I was there to be able to help them through that process. But as I discovered all these issues they were having, I was like, you know what? There's a big problem because people don't speak finance. For a lot of people out there, it's like another language. I joke that it's like Klingon.
And so, it's geek speak. There you go.
Right, exactly. And so what I said to myself is, well, wait a minute, I can speak both languages, and I really have a passion for small business. I want these guys and girls to do well because I know they're smart people and they're dedicated to what they're doing. Maybe I can step in there and help them talk to each other. And that's really how the notion of financeability was born.
Well, I think that's a huge deal. I mean, really, in so many industries that we're seeing now, where the importance is in communicating between the different branches that make things work is becoming essential, because really different industries have their own unique language. And the problem that comes with that is when you're embedded within an industry, you begin to speak that terminology. And when you're trying to communicate to people that are not in that industry, you don't know how to talk to them. And so having somebody that's able to be on both sides and be your Klingon translator becomes pretty essential. So now, what does finance ability do for businesses now?
Well, finance ability is really a way for business owners to understand the value that they offer, both for themselves, right? Because they're the ones putting in their heart and soul in building their business, but also to anyone who could give them external funding, one of the suits, a banker, or people like that. And so the notion of financeability is really to put the business owner back in the driver's seat of the funding process. Because all too often, when you don't understand what's happening, your immediate reaction is just to kind of go silent and let other people make the decision and kind of make an offer to you. And you're sitting there going, well, okay, I don't really get it, but I know I need the money, so I'll just take it. You're really passionate. So the idea of financeability is to help you understand what you've got of value, so that then you can go out and look for the funding that's right for you, not just the first offer that comes along.
That's your hashtag, that know your worth, which I see in the upper right portion of your screen. That's what that really deals in. Not only the value that your company has, but how you are able to measure the worth, the financial worth of that business when you are in a position where you need to ask for money.
Yeah, because a lot of people. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no. Go. Continue what you're saying.
Yeah, I was just going to say, a lot of people, there's a lot of things at play with asking for money. Already, we're super uncomfortable in our culture talking about money. The fact that you have to ask for it makes some people feel inferior and all of that. But I think the fact that, in addition, you need numbers, there's math involved. It just sometimes becomes too much for people. And so what I really want to do is help business owners get some confidence with a little elbow grease and a little mental gymnastics. You're able to understand what your business is worth, both in a nice story so people can connect with you, but also on the numbers side.
So that's interesting that you point that out, because oftentimes when we think about finances specifically, we're talking about numbers, but you're talking about not just the numbers, but being able to connect the analytical concept, which with one side of the brain, with the emotional concept behind your business and your brand, which is the other. How do I know you've done this for a lot of different businesses. How does the analytical and the emotional intersect?
Well, what you have to do, at least in my view of the world, is you have to make sure that you have a framework that lets you have both pieces, right? So The issue a lot of people run into is when you start talking about traditional valuation methods, they're totally detached from anything you recognize in your business. Discount rates and future benefits and all this stuff. People are like, what the heck is that?
Right.
And so what I've done is I've created a method for people to understand what builds value. It's called the PI valuation: profit, intention, and independence. And what you're able to do, because those are things you can understand about your business conceptually, once you get the concepts down, then it's easy to go and look for the numbers that can help you demonstrate how each of those elements builds value in your business.
So you have the brand story. We talk a lot about brand story and the mission and vision of your brand, but then you're able to actually take that and demonstrate that in ways that are measurable. That's sort of what I hear you saying.
Exactly, and ultimately, it's something that I encourage people to do, not just at a macro level, when you're looking at business, but even as you're making choices in your daily life, right? When you're deciding, do I work on this project, or do I get on Twitter or do I stay on Google Plus?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to have a little bit of analytical thinking, but you've got to know what your goal is. You've got to have that kind of intention, that story out there that helps you stay on course. Because you can get lost in the weeds with all kinds of analytics and all kinds of tools, but if you don't remember you're trying to go north, it's not very helpful.
Right. Well, and that raises a good question, because a lot of times when we think of businesses, particularly in terms of businesses that are tracking all of these different profit and loss things, evaluation methods, all these type of things you're talking about, oftentimes we're thinking in terms of teams, right? So businesses that have employees, stuff like that. But you don't just deal with that. You also help people that are solopreneurs. I think is the buzzword of the day. But individuals that have an entrepreneurial focus and are building a business but helping them realize that there are still ways where you can be able to measure what your business does, even as a solo individual.
Exactly.
Do you find that there is a significant difference between the way that people approach a business when they have a team and the way that people approach a business when they are individuals?
I don't know. It's a good question. It's kind of a chicken and an egg argument, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to know which came first. But I think that people who have a very clear intention, for example, somebody who goes into a business knowing that they want to build this thing up, they want to run it for 3 years, and then they want to sell it. Someone like that, who has that very clear intention, has a much better chance of success than someone who maybe has the same size team, but has a much shorter term view of what they're trying to do. And so I'm not convinced that it's necessarily the size of the team. I think it's more the mindset of the owner that has to do with their ability to really move forward. Because if you can't see further than your nose, it's awfully hard, one, to motivate other people around you, but two, to determine if you're going the right direction.
Right. Well, and I imagine as well that when it comes to building a business that you need money for, that there are far more challenges for individual solopreneur type startups than fully fledged teams, right? So if you come in and you say, there's 4 or 5 of us and we're launching this business, and here is kind of where we're going with it, you have a much better chance than maybe somebody that says, hey, I am launching this business, it's a solo endeavor, and here's where I'm going with it. Do you find that having that sort of framework helps or hinders or raises unique challenges?
I do agree with your set of challenges. Excuse me. The biggest challenge that you have with a big team is, unless everybody's a founder, some of them want to get paid. So you need cash right away. Whereas if you're a solopreneur, maybe you've got a little bit of cushion, your personal savings will hold you through the next year. And so you've got some time to get off the ground before you have to start pulling cash out of the business. Mm-hmm. So, there's that piece, but I do agree with you that on the funding side, it is much more complicated to find external money for someone who is their only chief and Indians, if you will. And it's very funny because the reason for that is something that is called the bus factor. I don't know if have you ever heard of the bus factor?
Teach me about the bus factor.
So this helps everyone understand very clearly why your business needs to be independent, okay, which is something I'm a big proponent of. When you talk to almost any venture capitalist or equity investor, they want to know how many people get hit by a bus before your company goes under. Well,
before it goes under the bus?
No, before it's no longer able to operate, right? Yeah. And so of course the problem with being a solopreneur is the number's 1. It's right. You. It's totally you. Although that
increases the risk factor for people that are considering funding a startup.
Right, because then what happens if you as an individual have an accident or, God forbid, get hit by a bus, then their investment wasn't necessarily diversified, or, the risk wasn't really spread out well. So, talking about the bus factor, although it's kind of graphic, it usually helps people really understand why it's important, even as a solopreneur, for example, to work with subcontractors. Maybe you don't bring people on as employees, but what you do is you hire a VA who takes care of part of your billing, or who takes care of certain elements of your business, so that you can reduce the risk factor, the bus factor, for yourself.
So you don't have all your eggs in one bus.
Exactly. You don't want all your eggs in one bus.
Well, and now, and you mentioned independent contractors, VAs, which virtual assistants, not veterans necessarily, but virtual assistants. So that there are ways that even without having an employee base, you're still working with other people.
Exactly. And so I think that's something that, with the increasing technological advantages we have, things like Google Hangouts, things like, all different ways to video conference and to work together, teamwork, Asana, Trello, all these tools that we now have access to, they can really facilitate a different type of relationship. Instead of it being employer-employee, it can be a lot more collaborative. And your team, instead of being, this person is in my team and they're an employee, and this person's a subcontractor, so somehow they're not as valuable, you can treat everybody equally and kind of spread that risk around to the extent that your budget allows you to do it. Then you're really only limited by how much money you have to have that work done by somebody else, not by the fact that you have to take them on as an employee.
Right. Well, and to expand upon that, this is when we talk about relationship building, and that's one thing that is the way that you work collaboratively with other people and build relationships with people in your industry. That also, those relationships that you build with those peripheral to your industry, allow you to sometimes operate in ways where there's mutual benefit there without it necessarily being cash. So if you have if there's an agency, for example, that if you're a marketer and you have an agency over here that does branding design work, and you need some branding design work done, and you can arrange an exchange of services where you help market their branding design service, and they provide some of those design services for you, and you promote them in exchange. You can often wind up, if not eliminating the exchange of cash altogether, you can at least cut down on a lot of that, so that there is that initial small bank account that startups often have isn't necessarily depleted because you're working with subcontractors. There are some other ways to do that, which expands what you were talking about, I think.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the things I'm a big proponent of is seeing everybody as a potential partner. Right? Because you never know, just like you said, when you meet somebody, whether it's on social media or at a networking event or, through your great Aunt Edna, you never actually know the whole story of who that person is and where they've been, what contacts they may have. And so if what you have is a very clear picture of what direction you want to take your business, then it's easier for you to connect with people and to be able to say, oh, you do branding work? You know what? Just the other day, I had a client who needed branding work, or as you said, I need some branding work. Let's see if we can collaborate together on something that's going to help you and something that's going to help me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I mean, great example of this. We had a conversation with Bess Auer, who is the founder of the Florida Blog Conference here in Florida, which is massive. It's the largest gathering of bloggers, at least in this state. She runs several different blogs and a Gotta Get Blogging group. And one of the things that she ran into is she made a connection with somebody on Twitter who did not have much of a following. But she wound up building a relationship with them. Turns out this person that does not have much of a following does have a television studio that in Denver, I think it was, and they wound up airing, and I think she has a weekly show now that airs on television in Denver about blogging, entrepreneurship, and those type of things that came out as the result of a random relationship that she built on Twitter with somebody in Denver that, by all looks, didn't look like that would be somebody that would have any pull. And it turns out behind the scenes there were some pretty significant things that came out as a result of that.
Yeah, and that's exactly the type of thing we're talking about. If when you're connecting with people, you're not kind of sticking them into a box and saying, this person's not a client, so I don't have time for them. Or, right now I'm looking for somebody to do my accounting, so I can't connect with this person because they don't look like. If you go into it more invested in hearing what the person's story is and telling them your story, a lot of times opportunities will open up that you would never have thought of. So, and I'm preaching to the choir here, I know, because you do this very well. But, when you're out there talking to people, understanding what your goal is, what do you want this business to be and how does it really help people? Mm-hmm. And being able to communicate to them just, very succinctly, that whole part of your business can take you really, really far. Whether it's funding, just like you were mentioning, even clients. Sometimes you meet clients because you met somebody and they said, oh, like we were talking about before, oh, I know somebody who was looking for branding services. Why don't you talk to him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so those interactions wind up fueling a lot. Now, what are some of the challenges that you've seen, that you've really seen businesses that are looking to acquire either the capital that they need to do what they want to do, or even just not necessarily venture capital in the sense that they're getting money, but that they're building, like a lot of solopreneur startups do. They're building this cushion over time. What are a lot of the challenges that you've seen kind of regularly reoccur in your experiences?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is being afraid of the numbers. And we talked about this earlier, right? But there are a lot of people who either they don't do accounting at all until it's time for taxes, right? So they don't have a clue for the whole year. They don't know what's going on. They just know what's in their bank account. And then at the end of the year, they figure out, oh, okay, so I made a profit or I didn't, or, here's how much I sold for the year. Then the problem is they're reactive, right? When they're afraid of the numbers and they don't go and look for those numbers, they're reacting as opposed to being proactive. And so they're not able to adjust in the middle of the year and say to themselves, oh, wow, well, I know that to cover my salary, for example, of, $3,000 a month, I need to be able to sell $6,000 a month of products. And last month I only sold 4. I better get out there and do some marketing. With the numbers, you can get that kind of information and take action. But a lot of people kind of stick their heads in the sand and are just like, oh, I don't know what it means. I don't know what it means. I don't want to know what it means.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get that because here in my home, my wife covers the finances, so I don't have to. I don't usually look at that unless we wind up in some sort of a problem, and then we wind up backtracking. But she takes care of all the bills, makes sure everything's good. I just make sure there's enough money in there to cover everything. But I don't have that luxury when I'm doing things with BlogPhoto.tv, and I'm looking at wanting to be able to fund design stuff or marketing stuff or the different ways that money is going out. I have to kind of be aware of that. But you also raise up another good point, because there's a balance in there somewhere. Because on the one hand, you can be totally tied to the numbers, right? Where you're just focusing on them all the time, and you can't really get a vision of sort of trends that are taking place. or the way that they're working together. You just know on this day we had this much, on this day we really did, and on this day we kind of did. And so you have a very micro view. And on the other hand, you have this very reactive perspective that you were mentioning, where you look at it at the end of the year and go, maybe we should have done some things differently. Where is a good medium in being able to track some of these so that A, you know what's going on, and B, you can be able to make adjustments to maximize what's good, minimize what's bad, and move in the directions you need to go? What is a good medium in watching those figures?
Well, that's a great question. I would suggest, at least at the beginning, that you only look at stuff monthly, for the simple reason that a lot of the fixed costs of your business, if you're renting office or restaurants or retail space, you pay your bills monthly. Your utility bill month, your phone bill comes every month. And at the beginning, if you're paying yourself a salary, you may only pay yourself that salary once a month. So, kind of set aside a half a day or a day to say, okay, I'm going to look at my financial situation. I'm going to understand where my money went, where it came from, and I'm going to make some decisions and put them into place for the next 30 days. And then I'll come back and check and see how they did. Because you're right, Thomas, if you're in there every single day, someone clicked, but they didn't convert. Oh no, someone, you'll drive yourself crazy. That's no good.
Well, and we do that as bloggers, right? Because particularly in the beginning, when we are looking for that first threshold, which is, we have 100 visitors in one day, and that's the big, milestone we want to hit. We're watching every single day to see what we're getting in and what we're not, until we realize that there's actually something, until things actually start really happening, and then we finally learn that we need to step back and take it. But in the beginning, I think that happens most of the time with bloggers that are so locked into the analytics that they have a hard time seeing the forest for the trees, because there's a lot of trees you can focus on.
Right. That's completely true. And I think that's where trying to remember your big picture, what's your intention? What is it you're trying to build? Well, if this little detail of information is not going to help you make a better decision, then don't waste your time with it. Set yourself up so that yes, I will look at it, but I don't have to look at it every single second of every single day.
Yeah. And I think we see fear on both parts of that. Where you were talking about fear where people are afraid to go after the numbers so they don't look at them, and fear on the other side where people are afraid to distance themselves from the numbers, because what happens if something happens on a day and I'm not looking at it? And particularly when we're in that really micromanaged state, because we're afraid that something might go wrong, versus recognizing that there's some fluctuations. You need to look at some things over the longer term. And we're going to come back to that. I know we've got some great questions that are lining up here in the comment stream. We're going to dive into those questions in the second half of our show, which we're going to be going into in just a moment. But I do want to remind you that if you do have any questions here for Stephanie, make sure you're leaving those either on Twitter with #STShow or right here on the Google event page. We're going to be bringing those in here in just a moment. But right now, we are, according to the Big Green Social Theory clock, right at the halfway point in our show. And do you know what that means, Stephanie Sims?
I think that means we're going to play this or that.
That means that we are about to play this or that. Well, this is the part of our show where we get to know our social media leaders just a little bit better by asking them a series of 4 this or that questions. These questions are drawn from my trusty Would You Rather deck. And on these cards, which I will be randomly drawing from, there are 4 categories. The first category is fear or discomfort. The second is appearance or embarrassment. The third is ethics or intellect. And the fourth is a random category. Each one will provide you with 2 opportunities, 2 possible choices, Stephanie, and you have to choose which one you would rather, this or that, and then tell us why. Are you ready to play?
Okay, I think I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. I'm going to shake these up here just a little bit. You can see that I'm doing that. All right, here we go. Oh, this is such a perfect question for you. Would you rather, Miss Finance Ability, wager your life savings on the flip of a coin or on your ability to hold your breath for 2.5 minutes with absolutely no testing or practice?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It's interesting because I hate probabilities. Like, not just because it's a math thing, but because every time there's a probability, it's easy to think about the person who's in the minority, right? Well, there's only a 0.7 chance of that happening. And it's like, yeah, but it still happened to someone, right? For them, it was a 100% chance.
50% chance.
Right. And this one, it's like a 50% chance. So I'm not a big fan of probabilities, but I haven't been running lately. So I'm not sure about holding my breath for 2.5 minutes. I think I would have to say we'll go with the probabilities because my husband could make that work. He's a probability guy. He can figure out a way to make me okay with that.
Okay, so due to your husband's ability to make you feel okay with wagering your life savings on a flip of a coin, we'll go with that. That is, I'll tell you, that is a persuasive husband. He needs to be in the sales department of your business.
He's actually an engineer who did sales and marketing all his life. So he's in the right place.
Well played, sir. All right, question number 2. Would you rather look like you're 60 when you're 20 or look like you're 10 when you're 40?
I'd rather look like I'm 60 when I'm 20.
Interesting. And why is that?
Because in my family, we age very gracefully, and my dad still looks great, and so does my mom. They're over 60, and I think they still look great, so it's not a problem.
So you want to look, so I think that's cheating, but so you want to look their version of 60. So what you're saying is you want to look like a 60-year-old that looks like they're 20 when you're 20.
Exactly. I'm fine with that.
I'm not sure that works, but we'll go with it. Okay. Well played again. You and your husband, you got this thing down, I think. Question number 3. Would you rather compete in the Olympics, place first, and have the gold medal publicly taken away from you 1 year later, or win second place indisputably?
Win second place indisputably. Because I don't know. It's a little bit of a bias there, right? Because I'm assuming that if I had the medal taken away from me, I did something wrong. So I'd rather play fair and get my right place, get the appropriate place, even if it means I don't win, than cheat.
Mm-hmm. Or it means that you were able to cheat well enough to get second place and not get caught for it.
You've been hanging out with Lance Armstrong. That's your problem.
All right. So, last and final question. If you had only one toy, would you rather have an Etch-a-Sketch or a container of Silly Putty?
Oh, Silly Putty. No question.
And why?
I hate Etch-a-Sketch. I was just really crap at it when I was a kid, and so I never wanted to play.
Because you hate Etch-a-Sketch due to your because of the fact that you would come in second place with Etch-a-Sketch?
Because I am incompetent for Etch-a-Sketch. That's true. I am completely Etch-a-Sketch incompetent.
Etch-a-Sketch competent. All right. Well, this has been This or That. And I think we all know Stephanie Sims just a little bit better. We've got some great comments in here, and I want to dive in over here. I think we've kind of tackled this one over the course of this, but I'm going to bring it up anyhow. Julie Holberg asked, what about solopreneur startups? And when that question came in, I think we were discussing some of the differences between solopreneur startups and team businesses. So let me rephrase this a little bit, if this is okay, Julie. What advice in terms of building capital would you give to solopreneurs that might be different than what you would give to teams?
Okay. So I think, and we did talk about this a little bit, but I think one of the most important things you need to understand if you're going to be starting a business on your own is how much money you're going to need to cover the period before your sales are high enough to pay for your business. Okay. It's just a profit calculation. But of course, when you start out, you're not going to make much money. You know, you got to take some time, people get to know you, but you're still going to have some expenses related to your business. So what happens to a lot of people is they don't really calculate that amount of cost that they'll have before they start selling. And they end up running through their personal savings to pay for all of that before their sales get to a high enough level to make the business profitable. So I think you need to understand how much you need, and then you need to make sure that you've got that much in personal savings on top of what you need to live, because you can't run your business and not eat. You have to be able to do both. So
and not live, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's valid, and I think you're absolutely correct. Particularly in an industry, if you deal with a lot in terms of the social media industry, a lot of the things that you dive into are kind of nickel and dime you. You got $5 here or $10 here. You've got hosting is $10 a month, and you've got this social tool that you're using, which is $5 a month, and you have access to Buffer Pro, which is another $10 a month. So you have a bunch of things here that look like they're little expenses individually, but they add up, and people don't look at, well, what is that cumulative effect, and what do I need to put in play to counter that? Which also, I think, and you can correct me on this, but I think that also is necessary for people in determining the prices for the services that they're charging or the products that they're selling.
Exactly. That's the kind of thing that you want to factor in as you're deciding what it costs for someone to work with you, or for them to buy your product. You need to make sure that your cost not only covers what we call the direct cost. Say you make a pencil. Well, to make a pencil, you need wood and you need lead and you need an eraser. That's the direct cost of your pencil. But you also have to send the pencil to the person. You have to take the time to create a website so they can order your pencil online. And all the things that come with what I call running your business. So as you're pricing your products, you need to include not only what it costs for the specific product, but a piece of the cost of running your business.
Now, and do you also factor in how much time does it take to produce a pencil?
So this is a very interesting question, and it's something that I think everybody ought to calculate for themselves. Is what is an hour of your time worth? Okay. You may not directly charge that to your end customer. It may take you 30 seconds to do this pencil, and you may not add 20 cents or $1 to the value of the pencil for it. But you need to know what the value of your time is so that you can make the decision about what are the things that I can get somebody else to do whose time is less expensive than mine, and what are the things I absolutely need to do myself because they're justified by the value that I bring to that activity.
Now, that's interesting that you said that, because that is not a perspective that I had thought about before, in terms of saying, okay, what is an hour of my time worth? And then saying, can I hire somebody to do X, Y, or Z that will cost me less than what I'm valuing my time at?
Right.
And that, in which case, your outsourcing actually saves you money, because you know that the hours that you put in are going to bring in X amount of income, and you can dedicate that more towards income generating activities.
Right. Well, the easiest way to get your head around this example is to think about a doctor's office.
Okay.
There's a reason the doctor does not call you to confirm your appointment. There's a reason that he doesn't sit at the reception area and give you the paperwork to fill out, right? Because the highest and best use of his or her time is to see patients, to diagnose them, and to decide what the treatment is.
You mean the receptionists don't get paid the same as the doctors?
I don't know. I'm not sure, but I'm thinking there might be a little difference there. But if you, and again, it's not this is where the whole money discussion gets a little weird, right? Because the people are like, well, he must be more powerful than the receptionist, or he must think the receptionist is, you know, crap or something because she doesn't get paid as much. It's not a power play. It's not like saying, well, my time is worth more than your time. It's just saying, what's the best use of my time and what's the best use of your time?
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
When I think that's an important, yeah, no, I think you're right, because it comes back to when we put, if this person is able to put an hour in over here and generate this much income, and this person puts in the same hour in over here and generates this much income, this person is paid less because their income, the activity is less in terms of the income generating that it does. So now I am curious though, and if this winds up being too technical, you can give me just sort of a general response. But one of the things that particularly in a social media or more technical oriented industry that you run into is you create something that maybe it's software, or maybe it's a course. You can look at a course, right? That people can, that once that's created, you're not recreating it for each person. Once it's created and it's up here, and then it sort of creates sort of a residual. I mean, I don't really want to say residual in the
right.
sense.
It's what we call passive income, right? Because instead of you having to be physically present to deliver the service, you create it, and then people can use it when you're not there.
I mean, we may still actively be marketing that,
right?
But we're not actively performing that service every time. In which case, if it takes somebody 20 hours to create this, or 40 hours to create this, or 120, however long it takes, how do you go about measuring price points for something like that, knowing that we're dealing in some ways with a long focus on this after the fact, where the hours that you put into in the creation don't have a direct equivalency?
Right. Well, what you're going to want to do, at least in my mind, is you're going to want to understand what I would call the break-even point on that product. Okay. Right? So what I would do is I would work it backwards, because your price is always going to be determined by the market, right? You're not going to be able to sell something to people at a price that they find completely ridiculous for the value that you offer. So the upper limit of what you can ever charge is what the market will accept, right? And I mean, we're all honest people. We want people to get a ton of value from the services that we provide them. So you're not out there trying to, bamboozle people. That's not what we're talking about. But what you want to do is understand, okay, I've invested, say, 10 hours, and say that you value your time at $100 an hour. You've invested $1,000 in building that product. Say that you decide, to make the math simple, that the product costs $200. You know you need to sell 5 products. 1,000 divided by 200 is 5. You need to sell 5 products in order to break even. And what that helps you do is that helps you understand, as you're marketing the product, okay, where am I in the cycle, right? And it can also help you, frankly, before you start building the product, because if you do that calculation and you say, hey, it's going to take me 120 hours to create this product, that's $12,000 if your time is worth $100 an hour. So how many products are you going to have to sell to get your $12,000 back? Is that the best use of your time? How likely are you to sell that, as opposed to maybe a product that takes less investment on your part, but that you can sell at a lower price point, but sell more of?
Right. No, and I agree. I think that's a great piece of value to walk away from, is the way that you value that. We have some other really, really great questions in here. I know JD Quinichet had a great one, and Joey Giangola. It's great to see you here. Also had some great ones. Let's bring up JD's. I know she had asked this even before the show started. She wants to know, can you speak about the most practical means by which I begin successfully asking people for help? And she says, she needs help to accomplish some of the things she's wanting to do, but she also doesn't want to seem so needy in her requests. I think some of this goes back to your know your value discussion that you gave earlier, but what are some practical things that can be done with that?
Well, one practical way to help yourself understand where you can use help is to start, I call it a business journal, but you can call it whatever you want. Start documenting what you do, particularly the things you hate to do. Right? So, for me, I work with numbers all the time, but I don't really love invoicing. Invoicing is not my thing. And so by documenting invoicing, what I'm able to do is I'm able to create a process that for myself, I might be able to refine, because if I'm looking every time I invoice at this, and this, and I say to myself, well, why am I doing that? That's backwards. I could do this first. I may refine my process to start with, but the big advantage comes when I can say to myself, okay, you know what? I'm ready to get rid of invoicing. I don't want to do this anymore. I have a piece of paper that's basically a request for an offer. So I can go to a virtual assistant, to a bookkeeper, to someone who I would entrust with that particular task. And I can say, here are the 10 things I want you to do for me. How much would that cost? And I can decide, yes, it's worth it for me to ask that person for help, as opposed to just kind of standing there hat in hand saying, I need help, and I feel kind of weird asking you for it. It helps you get very specific about what you're asking for, and it gets away from that kind of queasy, I'm screwing up feeling, if you will.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a scary thing sometimes, is to go in and ask for that, particularly because I think in the early stages of launching anything, a new venture of any sort, there is an element of it which is where we're a bit self-conscious about what we're doing, because maybe we know that we're uniquely gifted in this area. This is something that we can offer that's of incredible value, but we know that we haven't necessarily proven that yet. And so when we step out and ask for help, I think sometimes we, at least for myself, I worry that I give the impression that now this area where I'm supposed to be really good at, I'm communicating that I'm not actually as good as I'm telling you I am. And sometimes we need to get over that and recognize that that's just not how life is. That's not how business works. That this collaboration is part of it.
Right. And that's an interesting point that you make, because I'm trying to think of the name of the community. I think it's called Lend One Hand, right? There's a really cool community here on G Plus that's kind of based on this notion that I like to use, which is everybody is on a path, or everybody's on a ladder. You can see it however you want. And we're all at different places. But regardless of where you are, there's nobody who's all the way at the top, and there's nobody who's all the way at the bottom by themselves. So as you're going through, there's always somebody who's going to have something to offer you, some piece of advice, some suggestion, some new way of looking that you could learn from. But there's also a ton of people that you can be a role model or offer help to. And so as you're thinking to yourself, I have to go ask for help, don't put yourself in the position of, I have to go ask for help and I must be the dumbest person on the planet. That's not it at all. There are plenty of people who are not as far along on the path as you are. And all you're doing is asking for help from someone who's further along, so that you can share it with someone who's not as far along as you are.
And I think with that Lend One Hand, that Kristen Drysdale's part of that group, isn't she?
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. I first time I ever heard about that was through her, and she rocks. So Joey has another fantastic question on here, I think. Do most solopreneurs, in your opinion, or small teams unjustly distract themselves with the funding question too soon? What do you think about that?
So this is a great question, and thank you so much for being here today, Joey. And I forgot to thank JD. Her question was up there before, and so I think I said thank you, but thank you for that question. It was a great one. So Joey, I think that funding can be a distraction at any point along the journey. And what you need to do before you start worrying about funding is you really need to understand where you need the money and how much you need. So before you get all freaked out, oh my gosh, I don't have enough money, it's not going to work, you need to take a step back and do some of this analysis that we were talking about, kind of dig into your financial statements on a monthly basis and understand what the trends are. generally are sales getting better? Are things getting closer to where I need them to be? And a lot of times, as we mentioned, what you can do is you can see that sales are progressing, but what you've done is you haven't done a good job controlling costs. And so instead of your costs staying kind of, I have a shadow there. Anyway, instead of your costs staying stable and your sales going up so you get more cash, a lot of times you're spending along, you're kind of spending everything else that you're making. And so you don't need funding from somebody else. You need to do a better job controlling your costs. And then you'll get plenty of cash because your sales are going the right direction. Mm-hmm. That's one thing that you need to focus on, is know what you need and understand how much you can control before you go out looking for money. Because if you haven't thought through stuff like that, you're kind of going to shoot yourself in the foot, honestly.
And I think sometimes we see things that we think this would be a real good investment for our business, right, particularly from a marketing in the marketing areas, where we haven't actually gone and looked at the analytics of what's going on in our business to really know. And there are a lot of times, I think, there are better uses of that right in-house that aren't necessary to then step out and do a bunch of additional advertising or other marketing funds that we think we need the funding for when we've got the tools there. Right. There are also some great comments. I know we're driving close to the end, and I still want to have some time to talk about. I think we have kind of unpacked in the course of this a lot of the content that you're opening up in this fantastic book of yours that I know is going to be released shortly. But I want to make sure that we identify that book specifically before we go out. But I do want to tackle some of these comments. Joey had another great one. He says, this goes back to what you were talking about in terms of valuing our hours. He says, I love to ask myself the question, what am I uniquely qualified to do, and try to focus on those tasks and find ways to get the others off my plate. He says, still need work. I think we're all kind of in that same boat where the areas that we're particularly good at sometimes get drowned out by the areas we don't like doing so much.
And something that's interesting with Joey, with the fact that he put, the little hashtag still needs work, I think a lot of it has to do with your attitude, right? If you can accept yourself and just say, okay, could have done better, but I'm not going to get stuck there and think that I'm a loser and I'm a failure as a business owner. I'm going to pick myself up. I'm going to figure out how I can do better next time and keep trucking. I'm a big proponent of looking at everything as just a data gathering exercise. You don't get to draw conclusions about what the data says. You just need to take the data in and compile it. And then, once a month, sit down and draw some conclusions, take some action, and then wait a month before you get more data, because you can drive yourself crazy that way. That's, and I say this as somebody who has this problem. So I'm right there with you, Joey. Yeah.
No, and I think that's great, particularly when things don't work out the way you want them to. Recognizing that's not something that we need to view as a failure so much as a data point that we can then take and find, okay, what didn't work about this, so that we can make better, so that we can improve what we're doing in our business. I think those are important things that take place. Phil Boyer also had a question. He pointed out, not a question, but a comment. He said that you can't do it all yourself, and that getting help is not only essential, but it's smart.
Yeah, and I would like to say huge thanks to Phil for being here today. And that's where I think once you open yourself up to the idea that there are plenty of other people who can do specific things much better than you can, mm-hmm. you start to see things as a partnership, right? So instead of hiring a designer and kind of beating them about the head and shoulders because they didn't execute the design the exact way that you wanted them to, hire them and talk to them and hear their ideas, so that maybe together the two of you can create something that neither of you thought of on your own. Mm-hmm. That's how to make things work better for you. And that's where pairing up with people who believe in what you're doing is really, really smart.
Yeah, I mean, that that ability to delegate and connect with other people and bring help really is about an opportunity to build those relationships which fuel what you're doing and fuel your business as well. Now I know that we are drawing near to the end. I do want to tell us a little bit about this book that you have coming out, because I know I think we've kind of unpacked a number of its pages over the course of this hour, but tell us a little bit about what it is and what you've got going on with that.
Okay, well, first off, thank you so much for mentioning the book. And yes, we've uncovered several of the different concepts that are spoken about in the book. It's called Funding Your Business Without Selling Your Soul. As you can tell, I am kind of on both sides of the equation. I have the experience of the suits, but I've also got the experience not only through my parents, but through myself of being a small business owner. And the goal of the book is really to help small business owners understand all of their options, and like we talked about with financeability, give themselves the control of the process. Because anytime you go into a process where you're kind of uninformed and you feel like it's a lopsided relationship, they know more than you do, they have all the power or whatever, you're never going to get a good result. So the goal is really for people to come away from the book not only understanding what their options are, but having some concrete steps for how to move from where they are today to a place where they can obtain the funding if they want to. Although in the book, we do talk a lot about other ways to finance your business that don't have anything to do with a suit.
Mm-hmm. Which is important. That goes back, I think, to knowing who you are, what you're wanting to do, and what opportunities are available there. And in fact, this is one of the things, I should have mentioned this earlier, that I love about your site. If you haven't been to Stephanie's site, you need to go check it out. It's finance-ability.com. But you offer actually right there a free it's not a quiz, but like a survey to help you begin to break down what are the unique areas and how do you value your business and come to a point where you can create a level of valuation for your business that provides you the tools you need when you begin asking questions like, how am I going to fund what I'm trying to do with this, which is just a fantastic resource that you make available for free.
Well, I'm glad you like it. The whole goal is to make it not scary, right? Because I know people don't like to talk about money. We mentioned the, fear of numbers before, but I really believe business owners everyone who owns their own business already, you're like a superhero because you're not afraid to take your destiny into your own hands, and you know that things are hard, but yet you're still willing to try. So, I really believe that everyone who owns a business needs help, and you need stuff that makes you feel comfortable talking about the money part. And if the financeability quiz or anything else that I'm doing is resonating with you, then ping me on G+, or feel free to get in touch with me. I would love to talk to you more, because that's the way forward for everyone, is learning what you don't know from people that you trust and teaching what you know to other people who trust you.
Yeah. And your book, when is it due out?
Well, the book is officially going to be released in early May, but drumroll please. I was able to convince my publisher that we should make it available on pre-sale for anyone who's attended the show today. So I will drop a link into the event, and if you're interested in buying the book before anybody else can get it, you will be one of the first people who get it as soon as it's released in May.
Which is awesome. So we'll make sure that link is put into the comments so anybody watching this can be able to connect with that. And I will, those who are watching the preview or the replay, if we catch up with this on YouTube, I'll make sure that I put it in the description as well so that you can link to it there also. But that's absolutely fantastic. So tell us, you said Google Plus, where can we connect with you? Here, also at your site, or I'll just let you tell us.
Yeah, so you can connect with me on G+. I am on Twitter at finance_ability, because for some strange reason, Twitter doesn't like hyphens. I don't get it, but okay. Yeah. And of course, at my site, finance-ability.com. So if, Thomas, this because we worked together before, but I am always willing to help you. And if it's not something I can help you with, I'm happy to point you in the direction of somebody that I think could help you. So please feel free to ping me and let me know if you've got questions. I'm also always looking for subjects that people are struggling with. So, if you particularly are having a hard time with QuickBooks or FreshBooks or finding an accountant or, anything else that happens to be giving you trouble with your finances, hit me up and we will write a blog post or create a course that'll help you out.
Awesome. Well, I have loved having you on. I think this was an hour just chock full of incredible information. So I really appreciate you being on here. And for the rest of you that are watching, I'm Thomas Hanna. You can find me right here on Google Plus on BlogPhoto.tv. You can find me on Twitter, again at BlogPhoto.tv, or you can find me on my website, which is BlogPhoto.tv. So, but I would love to connect up with you there. If we haven't already met, make sure you toss me a message. I'd love to chat with you, get to know you, get a little bit acquainted with you. And having said all of that, you folks have a fantastic week, and I look forward to seeing you right here again next week on Social Theory. Thanks.